Rafi. So I have a Q&A session of the lot. I have a small presentation as well. So let me just walk through that, and then the questions will be addressed at the later of the stage.
Yeah, at the end of the training.
Yes, at the end of the
And
session.
we would appreciate all to be a little attentive and alert because this training has been arranged by on a short notice and very urgently so that you people get acquainted with all is going on in the market and in the system softwares. Over to you, Mr. Amirali.
Okay. Thanks, Rafi. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
So let me share the screen quickly. Are we waiting for some more people to join, or we can resume?
I think we are 3 minutes there in the meeting and let's wait for 2 more minutes or
All right.
if more to join, we can join. I hope
All
mandatory people have joined. Those who were asked to join mandatorily.
fine. Let's wait for 2 more minutes and then we can start.
Okay, okay, okay.
Hello. Hello.
Uh, Hello. Yes.
Please join the meeting,
Yes, yes.
the training
Tell me.
session. Okay,
Uh-huh.
okay, okay.
All right then. So let's begin. So let me just introduce myself. So I'm working as a senior functional consultant here for HCPM and finance module. So quickly, let's go through the session today for data import export framework. So basically, this is one of the crucial part as a functional consultant or even for the technical consultant as well. So once we are migrating from any legacy system to the new system, so we are dealing with a lot of huge data. For example, if you go into the retail systems or something, so we might have to deal with a lot of data, which is of very high volumes. Okay, so for that reason, so Microsoft has a separate framework. So that is a data import export framework. So which we will be dealing, which it specially deals with the data import and export features, and there are a lot of other capabilities. So we will just walk through quickly the PPT session and then we will directly get into the system. So let us understand what is the capability of the data import export framework in the first in the beginning. So what are the capabilities that is available in the system? So when to use the data import export framework and then when not to use it. So the agenda for today is to understand the data management overview and what is data entity concept. and what are the capabilities of the data import export framework altogether. So what are the categories of entities? What are the categories of entities that are available? So how do we copy the configuration from one environment to another environment or within the same environment? So and let us we will also see the demo, right? So let us understand what is a data management overview. So we have certain concepts, like these are the list of concepts that we should be aware before if we even starting the data management framework altogether. So we have something called data entity. So this is basically so let me put you like this. So Microsoft the AXDB is divided into two parts, which is AX database server, which has the transactional database with transactional data, and which AXDW server. So basically we have two different databases. So all our data, the transactions which we are seeing, that is on the AX transactional database, which is AXDB. All right. So to push the data into the system, so Microsoft does not give you the table access directly. So basically we cannot directly go to the table itself and then update the record directly. So instead what Microsoft has provided a framework with data entities as a concept. So basically if you see the definition itself, so the data entity is a conceptual abstraction or the encapsulated of underlying tables. So basically what Microsoft given is, so they have given the access to the table with some restrictions. So they are exposing the table through the data entities. So if as a functional consultant or a consultant, we have to import the data or we might have to export the data from the tables. So the only way that we can achieve this is through the data entities. Right. So basically the data entities is a conceptual model, like it seems to be a table, but it is not an actual table. It has a lot of concepts and a lot of classes built on top of it. So the more and more we get into the sessions, you will understand what is data entities. So right now, as an understanding, as a basic understanding, you should know that data entities are a conceptual tables that gives you access to enter the data into the system, or you can export the data from the system. All right. Then we will be dealing with the data projects. So this will be helpful for the implementations. Suppose if we have a list of data entities that we need to put it to in a single project, we can club all those entities into one, and then we can create a data projects. So from that, it will be helpful for it will help us to export the data as a whole. Just give me a minute. All right. So data project is a it's a more a configured entities. Like we will have a list of entities that will be added into a single project. So as a data project itself, we can give an access to the access to the client so that they can import their data. So we have data jobs, the job that contains executable instance. Like for example, we can attach the Excel file from our the Excel file from the outside. So we can put it into the system and create as a job itself. So that every scheduled time, or we can schedule a time or a recurrence, so that the system will keep on reading the data and then it will push the data into the system. So we will have a job history. So this is one of the most crucial thing that we need to know. So once the job is executed, we will have a history stored in the tables. So all the data. So as I told, we don't have access directly to the tables of a database server. So instead, we will have an access through the data entities, but also we have something called staging table. So we cannot directly put our data, which is the raw data, into the table directly. Instead, we park it in the staging table. All the computation, validation, and everything will be done in the staging level. So then it will be pushed back to the actual tables. So basically, you need to understand when we are accessing a data entity and then pushing the data. So it will be pushed into the staging table first, and then the data will be validated against the business logics, and then it will be pushed directly to the actual tables. And we have something called data packages. Data packages, it's a combination of data entities, which is a data as well as a manifest of data files. So basically, we can have multiple data entities added in a one single project, and we can export this as a data package. So we will get to know once we start using the system, and I'll show you in the demo. So let us move forward. Okay, so when are we going to use this data management framework? So what are the uses of this data management framework? So for example, if we wanted to migrate the data as an opening balances, when we are going from a legacy system to the new system, when a customer is migrating to a new system, we have to load all the data from the existing system into the new system, which is the D365. So during that data migration of activities, we will be using more of data management as a framework. And then we'll be using this to the migrating the historical data to the new system. And when we are, second thing is on the setting up a new company or a copying the configuration. For example, if the company has 10 legal entities, for example, the company has 10 branches and they wanted to maintain this 10 branches as a 10 different companies. So in that case, what we will do is we normally configure the setup and everything in one company, and then we will just copy that to a multiple companies. We will just copy the first company into other 9 companies using this data management framework. All the setups and the master data will be copied to the different companies. The one of the most important uh, capability is on the integration part. So we have mobile devices and any other third-party softwares where we wanted to expose our data from our D365 system to the third-party system. So in that case, we will go through the data management module. Again, we will have data that can be exposed to the third-party application. For example, mobile app. Suppose the user wanted to enter something transactions on a mobile app, and that has to come and sit into the Dynamics 365. During that stage, we will be using the data management framework. So as I was telling you, data entity concept is like we will not deal directly with the tables directly. For example, if you see the customer table is in a normalized fashion. So the customer table will have only the limited fields. For example, account number, customer group, and bank account. Similarly, the other details for with respect to the person will be stored in the party table. The customer address will be stored in the different table, that is on the address table. And his phone number and other contact details will be stored in a different table. So basically in the system, in the AXDB, if you go and have a look at it, it will have multiple tables that is combining together, making a single one table that is a customer table. So if we have to directly, if we are using directly a table to insert the data, we have to insert at the 4 different stages. First, we have to insert the data into the customer table, and then the party table, and then the address table, and then electronic address table. Instead, what we can do is we can achieve this in a single upload through the data entity. So this is the data entity view. For example, if you see that all the fields which are required for us to upload or to push the data from one environment to another environment, we will create a data entity. There is a customer data entity. So this will help us to fill only these fields which are required by the system in one single file and then upload it into the system. System automatically creates the creates the entries in the different tables. Right? This is the concept of the data entity. So though it seems like we are accessing a table directly, but it is not that we are directly accessing the table. Instead, we are accessing only the exposures that is given by the framework. So we will be dealing only with the entities. Using the entities, we will push the data. Again, as I said, it will park in the staging table with all the validation. Suppose if you have entered some duplicate data, all those can be validated during the staging table, and then it will be pushed to the actual tables. Next comes the capabilities. So what are the capabilities of data entity? So as I told you, if you see that data entity comprises of tables, so it has access to tables, query, and then code, all the business validation that can be performed in the data entity, and aggregate data entities. So the capability of the data entity is either within the system or outside the system. So what are the capability that within the system? Suppose if an end user wanted to load a data into the system, either it may be demo data or a test data. So we can import to the system to do our testing and performing the user acceptance test. Similarly, if we are going to the data migration, yes, we will be using the data entity. So that will be pushed into the system actual tables. Similarly, as I told you, we will have a third-party softwares or the Excel add-in, Office integration. So this is again very much important. We will be seeing this in detail in our session, demo session. As I told you, we will have a third-party integration where this can be achieved through the data entity itself. We have from the mobile, we can access the tables of the data through the data entity. We cannot directly have an access to the tables that Microsoft has restricted it. So the integration can be asynchronous or it can be synchronous. So meaning, so as soon as the data entered in the mobile, if it is in a synchronous mode, the data will directly get pushed into the tables. If it is in asynchronous mode, like for example, credit card transactions. So if you see the credit card transactions, so once you swipe it, it will not reflect immediately in your statements. Rather, it will be pushed in a batches. So that is called asynchronous integration. So all the file will be accumulated and through the recurrence, we will push all the file into the actual database. So what are the types of entity? What are the categories of entities that we have? So what are the data that we can load it into the system? So based on the nature of data, the entities are categorized in 5 different ways. So one is on the parameters. So parameter type entities are those where we can copy the configuration or the setup. For example, accounts payable parameters, general ledger parameters, all those are one single form where we do the setup, like how the system should behave. So that types of entities are grouped into a parameter entity. Next comes references. References, if you see the example of this references is just a tax code. For example, these are very minimal data that it is a part of setup, but these are the references elements that will be used for the transaction. For example, tax code, unit of measurements, dimensions, all those are the references table. So for that to load, we will the entities are categorized in a reference table. Similarly, we have masters. So masters are the complex references, like for example, customer master, vendor master. As I told you, customer master it seems as a single entity, but it has a different tables. So these are the complex references table where the data is scattered across different tables. That is a master that will be categorized as a master entity. Similarly, we have a document. For example, if you wanted to upload the upload the customer invoice attachments, suppose if you wanted to create any customer transaction, all those can be done through the document categories entities. Similarly, we have a transactional entities. This just want to give an idea that we cannot post the transaction through the data entities. Rather, we can create the transaction from the data entities. We can allow the user to post it. So what is not achievable through the data management is we cannot create the transaction itself. So we can allow the user, we can create a vendor pending invoices. For example, if you are uploading the vendor pending invoices, we can create the vendor pending transactions. So all the transaction, all the data that we are going to upload, it will not going to post directly. So user has to go and then post it from his system. All right. So these are the categories of entities. We will get in detail once we start using the module itself. Now let's go to the demo directly. So let me, this is one of the customers URL. Let me use this. Since it's an internal training, we can use this. So data management. So we can access this through the workspaces. So in AX 2012, we had a separate module, data import export framework. So right now it is being added into the system admin itself, system admin module, and we have a separate workspaces. So in this workspace, we have something called data management, or we can go to the system management module, system admin module. Under the workspaces, you will find the data management module. So let me get into the data management module. If you see, these are the list of activities that can be performed within the data management, right? So we can import the data. Either it can be from the Excel or it can be from the CSV file or it can be from the any other application. All right. So we can export the data from the database. As I told you, we cannot directly access the table. We have to export it through the data entities. So we have templates. I'll come back to this later. So we will see what is the data sources that are available. The configured data source is the data sources that are acceptable with acceptable in the data entities. For example, if you see, we have Excel file, we have CSV file, we have packages. So these are the list of files that are acceptable by the data entities. We can create our own uh, data sources. For example, if I open this Excel format, the type of this should the extension of the file should be of XLS, and it is of type file. The language will be English, and these are the different. This comes from the Microsoft itself. So, for example, the list of sources, these are available from the product itself. So we can use any of this as a file type and then use for upload. Okay. So we saw the data sources. We will see what is the data entity export that can be done. So we can, as I told you, we can export the data in our Excel. So that is by default, which is available in the system. Instead, we can also integrate it to some other system. So whatever the output of that, we can integrate it to some other database. So even that can be achieved by this. So as I was stressing multiple times, we have data entities. So if I click on this data entities, so these are the list of data entities that is available by the system itself. The Microsoft provides the standard data entities. Also, we have a capability that we can create our own databases. For example, if we create a custom table, so which is not part of the base product, so we can create our own data entities. So as we are aware that we cannot directly access the table directly and do the export and import. Instead, we will use the data entity. We will create the data entity. So the technicals will create a data entity for us. So while creating the data entity, as I was saying, they should always be creating a staging table. So if you notice this is the entity name, and this is the staging table name, and this is the target table. That so our agenda is to put our data into the target entity, which is a target table. But how do we do that? So through the entity from the staging table, and then we will pass this data into the target entity. If you see the data entity type, we will have two types of entity here. One is the simple entity, which means it will directly access a single table and it will push the data into that table. And also we have something called composite entity. Suppose if the data has to scatter in two multiple tables, for example, invoice journal or invoice transaction. So invoice has to go create the header as well as the lines. So during that stage, what we will do is we will use the composite entity. Or even even if the technical is creating the entity, if we have to specify that we want a composite entity for creating a purchase order, for example. So purchase order has a header, which has the header information and also the line. So this has a relation. So in that case, what we will do is we will ask the technical to create a composite entity for us so that we can import our data and we'll create the transaction. So in the data entity, these are the list of data entities. We can, as I told you, we can create a, if you see this SPY absence code. So these are all the custom entities that is created by our technicals. As a HCPM is entirely a custom module ISP solution. So we have to create these entities so that it will help us to import the data or export the data from the system. So we can see the target mapping. So we can go through the individual items here. So for example, if let me open a familiar one so that it will be easy for you to understand. Okay, let me take customer group. So if I open the target mapping, so these are the staging fields and then these are the target fields. So as a functional, we have a liberty to change the mapping, or we can just delink the mapping. Suppose if we don't want to enter the description from the Excel, suppose if the data is coming from outside and then we don't want to enter the description to the target. So what we can do is we can remove this link. So we can also see through the mapping visualization. What we can simply do is, if I don't want this description to pass on, I can select this and then delete this selection. So that if I upload the data through this entity, the description will never pass into the system. Ideally, this we might not use it during the data upload. This might be helpful for the integration. Suppose if the integration file is bringing 100 fields, out of 100 fields, you don't want to push all the 100 fields. Only 90 fields you have to push it. So in that case, what you will do is you will have the data in the staging table, but you will delink the target linkings. So in that case, this data will not be pushed to the targets. So that is a target mapping. So we are still in the data entities. So once we do the target mapping and things like that, so we can validate this so that the system gives if this data entity has some error or something. So we have entity structure. So this is all just we need to understand as a fundamental. So that if we have any issues, so that we can raise it with the technical to fix our issues. So if you see the entity structure, so this will run the business validation. When we import the data, as I was saying you, if there is already a customer with name Alphazens. Suppose if you are trying to import one more data with the same name, so there should be a validation. We cannot directly push the data into the table and then we will see the output. So data is a very crucial thing for the business. So we have one before inserting the data into the table. So we have to run the business validations. OK, so all those can be done on the data. This is a one-time thing that the technical will be doing it. So we have something called target fields. So this will show what are the field and what are the fields that are available in the data source and what is the target field name. So this will have it will just give you an idea that what are the fields that is required for this entity. Suppose if you are using this entity customer group, you will be knowing that what are the fields that are available in the entity. So this will give you an idea of that. And there is something called entity category view. So if you remember in our slides, we saw there are 5 different categories of entities. One is the parameter, references, document, transaction, and master. Something which we were not seeing is on the configuration. So that comes only for the system admin and then integration part, so that we are not dealing with that. So basically, we will deal only with this, which is the parameter. As I was telling you, accounts payable parameter, general ledger parameter. So if you wanted to identify what is a entity that you wanted to use, so you can go by module wise. For example, I wanted to see what are the entity that are available for parameters under general ledger module. You can select this. It will give you list of entities that is only for the general ledger module. All right. Similarly, for the masters, this will group you in with respect to the modules. Suppose if you wanted to identify which is the entity that I have to use for customer master, because there are around 1900 entities that are there in the base product, so we will not know which entity to use. So in that case, what we have to do is we have to come back to this category entity view. So there is a separate place that can be that helps you find the entity. But this is also another way that you can achieve. How do we find this? For example, if you have to import the fixed assets, so these are the list of entity that is available for fixed assets. So this will filter you and show you the entities. So for example, I have to import the fixed assets. So I will use this entity for importing the data. OK. So this will show the list of entities. So next, the parameters. So this is a one-time setup that will be performing it before doing any activities. Let me show you the parameters. So we will have a shared directory. This has to be there for performing any import or export uh, activities. And this is the connection that will be given by the system itself. Well, when we are creating the environment, we will have a separate server connection URL. So this will be helpful when we are giving this entity to a third party application. For example, mobile app, we wanted to give a service connection to the data, our server. So in that case, what we will do is we will give this URL to the third party application or APIs. So they will use this as a URL to access our system. So that is a connection URL. Suppose in the data entity, if there are any errors, so should we ignore it or should we stop it? So that is the setup that we are giving here. If there are any errors during our upload, that will create as a separate file. So if we enable this, it will create a separate file. Normally we don't do this because we will handle with the staging table. We have a staging in place where we will see that if the data is being pushed directly to the system. Suppose if there are any duplicate records, I was always saying we have already a customer called AlphaSense Consulting. Suppose if we are trying to create in the data management, we don't know, we are trying to add one more data with the duplicate thing. With this parameter, it is possible that system directly deletes during the import itself, so that it will import only the correct data. So these are the different default values. What are the number of SQL commands that has to be executed? All those things are there. So these defaults, you can go through that. It's self-explanatory. Yes. Entity settings. So as I was saying, we have the 1900 plus data entities from the system, and it keeps on updating day to day. So if we have to refresh the entities, we will come here and then we will refresh the entity. Suppose if you find that you are overridden the entity by mistake and you wanted to get back the original entity, which was by the product itself. So we will come back here and then we will refresh the entity. So then there is a setup for BYOD, bring your own device. So this just a setup when we are integrating this application with some other third-party applications. And there are some other compatibility setup that you can go through that. So this will come into picture only when you're integrating the application with some third-party application. So as I was saying, we can create a data project. If you remember in our slide, we saw data projects. So what we can do is we cannot give a full access to the customer or the end user to do the import and export. So because this is a risky thing, so they can directly go and update the tables, whichever the table they want. Rather, what we will do is we will create a data project. We will say this is the import project that is applicable for his profile. For example, as a finance accountant, I should be having an access only to my module, and I should have access only to create the journals. So what we will do is we will create a data project here with accounts payable, and then we will add only those entities. We will create that data entity as a role. So we will assign that to the user. So let me open that. Let me try to create a new one. The processing group is obviously table. We cannot give the full entire group to all the users. So what we will do is account import, for example, address import or account receivable import. This is one of the data project. So we will assign this to a role, particular role, or to the particular user, or it can be for everyone, right? So if this data project is given to the user, for example, let me take okay, account receivable clerk. So account whoever has this role, they have an access to this data project. So they will have a limited access to this data project. Only this can be used by them. They will be not allowed to alter anything. They can use this as a data import, and they will import the data with our import export framework. So basically it is like a user restriction with only limited data projects. We cannot give the entire data management module access. So this will be risky. So instead we will create a data projects and then we will assign it as per the user roles. So this is also one of the major important thing that data management framework has brought in. That is a copy into legal entity. Let me open this. If you see here, so as I told you, once there are if there are multiple entities, for example, in this environment, if you notice there are two entities. 14 is one of the company and 15 is a new company. So what we have to do is there was a requirement that we have to copy the exact same data, same configuration, everything into this company. So again, I'm repeating. So we cannot copy the transactional data. What we can maximum do is we can copy the masters, we can copy the references, we can copy the parameters. Like for example, parameter, when I say parameter, it is a setup. We can copy the setup. We can copy the masters, which is a vendor master, customer master. Those things can be done, and we can copy the configurations. So there was a requirement that we have to copy the entire configuration and data from 14 company to 15 company. So there are two ways to achieve this. Either we have to add all the entities in the 14 company and export the data, keep it in the Excel, and then go back to 15 company, switch to 15 company and import it. So that is one way of doing it. Instead, what we can do is we can simply stay in 14 company and then we will say copy into legal entity. So this gives me an option to choose a legal entity, copy into a legal entity as a project. So either I can choose the existing company. Let me just say copy stuff from 14 to 2. So basically, I've just created a project with a group name. Now what I can do is I can either create a new company altogether. Suppose if the requirement is to create a new 16 company by copying all the data from the 14 company. What we can do is we can create a legal entity from here, saying that the company name is XYZ and company is 16 and what is the region. If I click on OK, this will create me a company called 16. And if it is an already existing company, this will show me the list of existing company. I'll simply choose this as a existing company. So you can copy this configuration from one company to multiple companies. So it's not that only one we can do. If there are another 5 companies, we can select all the companies. And what we can do is we can add the entity one by one, or there is a template that I wanted to show you that in the beginning. So what we have to do is we also can copy the number sequences. So if I click on this, whatever the number sequence that are followed in 14 company, the same number will be copied to the 15 company, and then it will reset it to a smaller value. For example, this customer has a number sequence requirement for purchase order. It has to start with PO 00001. So that is a number sequence. We have already done a setup in 14 company, but the same thing has to be copied to 15 company. So that's when what we will do when we do the copy from the 14 to 15, we will also copy the number sequence. And there are chances that in 14 company, the PO is already reached maybe 1000. So we wanted to reset it to 0. So that is when we select this option. So the number sequence will be set as per the format and it will be reset to 0. The first number will be 1. Right? So what we can do is we can now we have copied. As soon as you do this, the basic entities which is required to copy the number sequence will be added by the system. Additionally, what we can do is we can go and add the entities, whatever the data that we wanted to copy. Suppose if we know that we wanted to copy only limited set of tables, then we will choose only respective data entities. For example, vendor master. Vendors V2. So this is the one of the entity, and then I'll add it. Basically, what it does is it also copy the number sequence, and also it will add the vendor in the vendor into the entity in the list. So once we start executing this, all the number sequences along with the vendor will be copied to the 15 entity. You see that this entity is also added. So once I hit the copy into legal entity, so it will start copying all the number sequences as well as the number vendor master to the legal entity. Suppose my requirement is to copy all the masters, like whatever the masters are there from this company and whatever the masters which are there for the accounts payable or accounts receivable, the module wise we can use the templates. So Microsoft provides the list of templates. Let me just show you that. So I was skipping this part just to show you here. So let me open the templates here. So right now there are no templates. So we have default templates. Let me just load the default templates. So what it gives is it will give the templates. For example, if I have to copy the workflows, or if I have to, for example, let me take GL as a general ledger as a workflow. Let me load this. So what template does is it will group all the entities which are required for GL general ledger parameter. For example, to configure to copy the general ledger as it is from this entity to another entity, we need all these entities. We need not to remember this entity one by one. Instead, what we can do is we can use this template in our copy project to entirely copy the general ledger parameter from 14 company to 15 company. So let me show that. Let me go back to the project. All your projects, either it may be import project or it may be export project or a copy into a project. It will come in the all projects. This will show you the list of projects that we have performed. Let me open the project which I have created right now. So we have a number sequence here. Now what I will do is I will not add entity one by one because I don't remember the entities. What I will do is I can copy the template and then I can merge with the existing templates or I can replace this. If I hit on replace and then click on OK, so this will remove the entities which are available and then it will only place these templates. So let me merge this. So to copy our general ledger module as it is from 14 company to 15 company, what we will do is we will copy the templates. So this is a Microsoft provided templates. We can create our own templates. Suppose for payroll ISV, we don't have a templates. So the Microsoft does not know what is our sequence of execution. So we can create our own set of templates. I'll be showing you that as well. All right. So it might give you some errors or warnings. For example, some of the templates that may not be applicable for you. So that is OK because it sometimes happens that for this UAE region, this company is in UAE region. Some of the legal entities or entities might not be applicable. So Microsoft has created an entity that is applicable for global system. There might be some of the entities that might be skipped. You can ignore that. If you notice here, apart from the existing number sequence, organization email template, calendar, date interval, default description, financial reason, journal description, all those are related to your general ledger module. So this will be added as a entities, individual entities. Either what you have to do is you have to individually add one by one, and then you have to copy that. So instead, what we will do is we will add as a template for general ledger module, add all the entities here and hit on copy into legal entity. So this basically does is it will copy all the tables from 14 company into 15 company. Right. So this is copy into data entities. These two are related to the integrations. Like if you have to automate the task, like if the data has to push to the mobile app or third party app, so then we will use the data task automation and dual write. Dual write is within the Microsoft family. So when I say Microsoft family, so we have a CRM application, we have a business central application. So if we have to integrate the data between the same family, so we will use dual writes. Suppose if it is a third party altogether, we will use a data integrator. So now we will use a dual write. So whatever the data that is been written in system A, it will directly go to the CRM. So we will have to come and link the environment here. So we will link whichever the tables that are applicable. When I say table, it is not the actual tables, it's the data entities. So keep in mind. So we will map that entities with the CRM or the business central application. So whenever I hit any write any transaction, it will also write into the other application. So the name suggests dual write, which means whatever I enter here, it has to be entered in the CRM application also. All right. So all these are the capabilities that are available in the data management. So now you might be familiar with the tiles which are applicable, which are there. Import. So is to create a new import project. So if I have to import any data, so I have to create a new import project. Just import. So I have to import some data. Before that, if I have to, let me take an export so that it will help you to prepare your data. So how do we prepare the data in Excel? So we need to know what are the columns expected and things like that. What we normally practice is we export the data from the system. For example, vendor. So for vendor master, and I was saying you there is another way to find what is the entity. Let me just duplicate this tab and show how do we find out what is the entity name for vendor master. So let me go to the accounts payable module and vendor, all vendors. So this is the place where I have to import the data. So I need to identify what is the entity name. So we have Office, Microsoft Office button here. So if you click on this, it will show you what are the list of entities that are available for this. Obsolete, for example, this vendor master, which is an older version, which is obsoleted with a new version. As and when the new version comes in, so this will become obsolete. So we will use the latest version. For example, vendor 3 is the version, latest version. This, when you move on to this, it will show you what is the entity name here. Vendor V3 is the entity name, and vendors V3 is the name of the entity. So we identified that what is the entity name. So we will go to the export project. We will add the entity. Vendors, if you see that the first vendor is not come here because it's absolute. You cannot use that anymore. So we will use this vendor V3. See, we have an option to skip the staging. So you remember that I told you there is a staging. It's like if you have to import the data, so data has to be there in the staging and it performs some validation and then it will be pushed to the actual tables. So what we can do is during the export, it is possible for us to skip the data, skip the staging. We can directly export from the tables to our Excel files. So, but during the import, it is not possible for us to skip the staging. So the default refresh type is full push. So this will be helpful in your import. Like if we have to push only the data which is incremental data, so that in that case it will be useful. Or if we have to full push, whatever the data is there, it will re-update everything. And whatever the fields that we can include here, for example, whatever the data that I can import it, only that fields I'll be exporting it. So that is also possible. Or we have something called auto reports and auto lookups. So this, when the table is getting created in the backend, so the by default the system creates an auto reporting template. So only those fields will be fetched out. Instead, if you select all fields, whatever the data that is available in the table, everything will be populated back to the Excel file. So we will choose importable files because again, after making changes, we have to import it also. So let me add this as an entity. Okay, there are some warning message that the system will give. For example, notes. There is a field called notes, which can maximum accommodate is 32768. This is the number of characters that the system would accommodate through the entity. Suppose if you are entering something more than this data, it will still accept from the Excel, but it will not be uploaded in your actual system. OK, so these are the warning message you should be aware. So during the payroll implementation, we normally face this issue. Like we cannot import the expression because it might cross the limit of the field which is there in the staging table. So what we normally do is we have an upload utility separately created for that. You will use that upload utility instead of going through the data management. All right, this is just a warning. So we don't mind if the notes is of this character. We are not going to import it that big data. Let me close this. So what I will do is I'll click on export now. Either we can, there are a lot of data, I mean, lot of entities that you are exporting at once. So what we will do is we can add and then add as many as entities in as many as entities. However, if we are batching it, this is an export batch option. If you hit on this, it will run on a batch. But instead, if you hit on export now, it will run on the front end itself and it will fetch you the data. So both are possible. It is one and the same. Only thing is if you have multiple entities and the data is huge, so we can put it on the batch and then we can start working on other things. All right. So the batch is executed now. So as I was telling you, we can download this as a package and then we can put it into the next other system. So let me just show you what will be exported in the package and download file. So if you see this, it will be a zipped file. So that will have the manifest and then the package header. So the same can be used for the other entity. We can use this file and then update the record and push it to some other company and then where we will import this. So as I was telling you, we can have n number of entities. All the entity list will be added over here. The same file, this same package can be used for creating the data in the another company. So now I will just download the file from here. So this will download me in the Excel format because this is the format I chose to export this data. There are 3,413 records are there. So this is the data, which is a composed data from multiple tables, because all these tables, if you see that number of columns are around 177 columns are there. So all these 117 columns are not there in one single table. It has been scattered in multiple tables, but as an entity, we are able to fetch all the data in one single entity. So we have as vendors V3, but it has given me all the data from the multiple masters. OK. I have to update some records in the first column. So I can copy the first column here. So I have some details to be updated in the master. So normally this updation will not happen once the system is live or once the data is there. So this updation will happen during our initial master data upload. Suppose if we find that there is some discrepancy in the address or something, what we can do is we can update the details here and then we re-upload it. So basically the data entity will re-update the existing master system. So for example, let me just update one of the record. The address description is, let me just take some other details. No problem. So, okay, let me just update some field. So you might have a question here. Maybe do we have to maintain the same format or something? So what I will do is I'll remove the fields which are not applicable for me. What I can do is I can remove the fields which are not applicable for me for the upload. So let me, whatever the details which are there, that will still be there, but I don't want to disturb those fields. Only thing I wanted to change is the fields which I'm going to update it now.
Hi, Amit.
Yes.
Sandeep.
Hi Sandeep. Yes.
Okay, I just joined a little late. So what all have we discussed till now?
So far we were just discussing on the data management parameters and things like that. So right now what we are doing is we are just exporting the data and then we are re-updating some fields and then we'll update back to the system. This is what I was just showing right
Okay.
now. Example, if you wanted to update the vendor search name here, Abu Dhabi Motorsports. So let me just remove the Abu Dhabi and I'll just say AD Motorsports, Abu Dhabi Motorsports. Let me just show you in the system that what is the data which is there. Accounts payable, all vendors. So this is the first vendor which I'm going to update. If you see the search name is Abu Dhabi Motorsports. So in our Excel, whatever the fields which we have exported, it has a huge columns. But later I removed all the columns which are not applicable for me or which are not mandatory for me. So the first and foremost thing you need to understand is the primary key or the one which is mandatorily required by the table itself. So vendor account number is a mandatory field. So that cannot be skipped. Without that, if you enter something that the detail will not be uploaded properly. Or it will not have a reference to upload for which vendor to it upload. So the primary key is the vendor account here. Of the fields are optional. What we can do is we can remove that. So only the search name is something that I need to update those columns as well. So I will keep these many columns only because the changes is only happening in this column, column K, but still I will keep these columns. Let me save this Excel file. All right. So now I'll go back to the system. And now now I will create an import project. So we have created an export project. So we have the data which was there in the system. So now we have modified something and then we have to re-upload it back to the system. Let me take the import project which I have just created, which is a test import. So these are the views that you will find it. So this is a standard view. I can change it to enhanced view so that you will see the form which we used for the export project. Let me add a file now. I have an Excel file. So before that, I need to choose the vendors. Vendors V3 is the entity because we know that that is the one we have exported it. Now I will upload and add the file from the desktop, vendor upload test, and then open. So basically the changes that we have done in the Excel, we are feeding back to the system, not directly going and updating one by one. Instead, we are using data import export framework. And then we have loaded the file. Suppose if the sheet, this has multiple sheets. As I was saying, we can upload multiple entities. Similarly, we can have a multiple sheets as well. You might have sheet 2 for vendor bank account, sheet 3 for something vendor group, sheet 4 for something else. So this can also be done. During the upload, you will see that the sheet lookup will be there. So what you can do is if there are multiple sheets which are there in the Excel, you will choose the respective sheets and then we can in the drop down, we will choose the right one which is there for the vendor accounts. Right. So here also at this stage, what I was suggesting is in the entity also I was showing you, we can see the maps here. So how the fields are mapped from our source, only these fields are coming and it is being mapped automatically by the system to the respective fields. OK, we still have a liberty that we can select the Excel field and then we can delete that selection. This I was mentioning you during the entity list. So we have a liberty and then we can see the mapped list. And if there are any mapping that is being missing, we have an option to add that as well. And there are certain things that can be done. For example, if it has a blank value, to ignore it. So all those things can be done. By default, system take care of that because it is going to the staging and then from the staging it is being pushed to the actual tables. So let me just import this. As I was saying, I can import it on the batch level and import it directly. Let me put this time as a batch. The batch job is scheduled. By adding this, you can perform any other task that is there. So that's the only thing. If you have list of items, if the data is huge, we can put it on the batch and then we can perform any other task. So right now it is executing. All right, so this is succeeded now. So we can see the logs. Like for example, it was uploaded in the source and what is the source from source to target? What is the time it has been taken? How many record has been created? It is one record. So all those things will be there. Even in the staging, we have option to see the data. What are the data that was uploaded? So what is the purpose of the staging is suppose if the data is duplicated or if any errors are there in the data, we still have an option to edit the data in the staging level. And then we will run only the one which is with the errors will be pushed directly to the system. So that is a reason of having the staging table in place. So we could have directly pushed the data to the target. So with the business validation, instead we park it in the staging table. So that is with the framework itself. So we will see what are the errors and what is the challenge. Let me just put erroneous record and then show you what is the status and how it can be handled. If you see the info log, it gives that one record has been updated. So first let us see that if the data is whether updated correctly or not. Let me just refresh this. If you see the search name which we have entered earlier, it was Abu Dhabi Motorsports. Now it is being AD Sports. The rest of the fields, if you notice, nothing have been disturbed because all the fields which are there, it is still there in the system. So we have not disturbed the existing record, only the field which we have to update it. We have chosen that as a column and then we have re-updated it to update the records perfectly. So what I will do is I will put a data with erroneous data in it. So let me just duplicate the same record. But other customer. I was saying, this is a primary key. This cannot be duplicate, but still I'm trying to upload it. Suppose the customer, as a consultant, we might get the data from the customer with the same data. We might not notice because since there are two records, it is visible that we can directly go and correct it. But if we get a customer data which is of 40,000 and 50,000 records, we will not have time to check if the records are duplicate or if it is erroneous. So what we will do is I'll upload the file again. However, we have to validate the data. I'm just telling you an incorrect example, but still we have to validate the data before uploading it. I just wanted to show the system capability, how it responds to the duplicate record. Right. I have uploaded the file. See, if we, right now what I have done is I have created an Excel sheet with multiple sheets open. So now the system is asking me which sheet to consider for vendor. So I will choose sheet 1 as a file, sheet 1 as the sheet to be considered. As soon as I selected the sheet, it will go. So as I told you, we can have multiple entities with this within the same Excel file. We will choose the sheet number which is corresponding to this entity. Suppose if the column header is not matching with this, the mapping will not happen. It will throw an error saying that the mapping is incorrect. Please check the error. So I have added this. So by adding this file did not give me any errors. So what I will do is I will import the data. I know that there is an issue in the data. All right, the execution has failed now. So let me see what is the data that is there in the staging. Let me open this just 1 minute. Yeah. It says failed to insert the record in the staging. The key corresponding to this vendor account number duplicate record must be removed from the file prior to import. So it clearly gives an idea that where is the duplicate record. So we have to rectify that. Only then we'll be able to re-upload it. Right. So that is a power of staging table where all the business validation will happen within the staging table itself. So before uploading it. All right. So this is how the import and export works. Let me show the other Excel add-in feature. So the data management is not limited to only this import and export and copy configuration. Apart from this, it also happens on the dual rate. Yes, of course we know, and it also helps in the integration part. Apart from that, we have something called Excel add-in. Excel add-in feature. For example, as I was telling you, we have an entity of a single level, or it can be a composite. When I say composite, for example, in the vendor invoice journal. So composite is something that it has to be linked from one table to another table. For example, parent and child relation. So invoice journal, this is a header table, for example, from the bank table point of view. And in the lines, we have the transactions. So this transaction and the header is having a link on the table level. Similarly, in the data management as an entity itself, if I show the entity for vendor invoice upload, show that. Let me take the name from there itself. If I open in Excel vendor invoice journal, so this is the template name. Let me just explain it. So what is the use of this open in Excel? So again, it's a data entity, composite data entity, which will help me to fetch the header as well as the line. So let me go to the invoice journal and then created a new record. I will open in the Excel. So what it does is it will give me an Excel file which is linked within the system using the data entities. So it will be mapped with the system itself. So whatever the changes I make it on the Excel, it will automatically reflect in the system. So let me just open that file. All right. So as I was saying, we have a header in the invoice journal and we also have a line. So this is a composite data entity. If you see that this is Excel add-in, the Excel add-in by the feature of data import export framework. So we have a journal description. So let me show you that. So this is a header, and inside that we will have a lines for the transactions. So now I will go to the Excel and then do the updation from the Excel. So it is always easy for us to put the data in the Excel and then do the upload once instead of creating one by one. So let me just change the description of this. For example, the invoice manual. So the description I am changing it to DA testing. So let me show you that what I am changing it. So the description is vendor invoice manual plus upload. Now I've changed it to DA template. So now in the Excel, we have liberty to enter the data. Data entry is very easy here. So I will choose the company, which is from the list of company 14. Account type is a vendor. So how is this coming? It is coming from the data import export framework. So basically this is because of the entity that is being created, vendor invoice journal. So the data is populating here. So let me add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Either I can type it or I can choose it from the fields. I wanted to enter, for example, 1000. Set company is same. Set type is main account. Okay, so I've chosen this. What I will do is I will do the publish now. So normally what we used to do is we will export it and then we were re-importing it. So now what we will do is from the Excel add-in itself, we will just publish this data. So whatever the details that we have entered in the Excel, so there is an error. Let me just see that. Okay. There was some error in the main accounts. All right. So it has basically updated the value here. If you see that, so let me close this and refresh it. So we have changed the description of this. Let me refresh this. Publish this. Right. So if I refresh the system, so it will automatically integrate it into the system through the data entities. So let me go back to the lines and show. So whatever the data that we have entered in the Excel, it has updated back into the system. So how is this happening? It is using the data import export framework and with the data entities. So this is the uh, okay, fine. So this is the entity that is there. So for example, if you have to modify the entity from the functional point of view, there are certain fields which is not appearing here. For example, if you say the document date and document is missing, what we can do is we can design this data entity field. Suppose if you see that there are so many other fields which is not there in our Excel file. Like for example, invoice date or the document date. It's a document data terms of payment. Maybe this is missing in our Excel sheet or the document date which is missing in our Excel sheet. What we can do is we can add that field also by using this design. We can design this Excel sheet. Let me show you that how do we design that. So as I told you, this is a complex entity. It's not a simple one-to-one entity. So we will add the invoice journal line table, edit this, and these are the available fields from the line table. So when I say table, it is the entity. So from this entity, we have these many fields which are available. These are all the selected fields. Suppose if we have to add some fields, for example, document, which is not there. Let me add that field, invoice date, document date. Let me add that field and then update. So this would have come here. So maybe I wanted to bring this field somewhere in the beginning. I can do that. Let me do that. For example, document date is in the last, so I wanted to bring it up next to invoice number. This can be done. For example, next to the vendor invoice number, the document number is there. So let me add current date and then upload it. Publish it back to the system. So this will feed the data back to the system with the invoice data as document data as the current date. Similarly, now the next time when you open the Excel file, so again it will give me the old template. OK, so this I have done the changes because I have designed this and then I brought the fields here. So this will go back. Once I close this, it will go back. What will happen is every time I need to go and update the template. So or design the template. So which is a tedious job and user will not have that knowledge to design the fields. So what as a functional from our side, what we will do is we will design the template and whatever the fields are required and whatever the sorting that is required, we will do all the designing from our side and then we will override the existing standard templates. So that is possible in the system. So let me show that. So we will go to the document management, document template. So it will be under common module, common and office integration. So these are all the list of Excel that is there for us to export it. Like for example, this is an open in Excel feature which has this template. We will go to that template. So vendor invoice journal template. So let me download this. This is the standard template. OK. Defined by the system. What we are going to do is we will override this and then we will add the custom fields. Maybe these custom fields are not there by the base product. We have added certain fields. We need to bring that in the Excel template. Every time when I open this open Excel, system has to fetch me that fields. OK. What we are going to do is we are designing the invoice template and then we are attaching back to the system. So let me design and add certain fields. I wanted to sort it in a different way, whatever the fields that I'm going to use it. As I told, the document date is missing, so I will add the document date. And then I wanted to sort it in my fashion, which I'm comfortable with. So below the invoice date, description is okay, offset is okay. Due date, I wanted to bring it next to the invoice date. Okay, so date, voucher, company, account type, invoice, invoice date, and due date. So this is how I wanted to see as a customer requirement, because they will prepare the data in this format. What they will do is they will bring all the data and copy it here and do the publish. So that will help them to do the transaction using the data import export framework. Let me save this file. So what I will do is, so there is a standard template. I wanted to override with the template which I am going to use it. Create a new, browse the file. So this is the one which I have done the modification and saved it. Let me open this. The template name, we have to maintain the same name as that of the old one. Okay, so I've just clicked on that and saved it. Let me say click on OK. It says the template, this template name is already exist. Would you want it to replace it? I can say what I can say is I can say yes. If this is the template that the user is going to use it. If you see the definition now, it is overridden. OK, so the previous template was given by the Microsoft. We have overridden that template to add some more fields which was requested by the customer. So what I will do is I'll refresh this. I'll open in Excel. I have the same template. When I open this time, I have invoice, document date, due date, which was not there earlier. OK, so these two fields were not there earlier, and due date was there, but it was there in somewhere, and document date was there. Document date was not there itself during my initial export, because that is a standard template, does not have that. What we will do is, what we have done is we have overridden the existing template and we have defined our own template, right? So by this way, we can override the existing template. So this will be very important in our implementations. So we will have to give the template as per the user requirement. So Microsoft provides a standard template with standard fields. All the custom fields can be added and then overridden in the document template module. Right. So I think I covered most of the things. So do you have any questions? You can ask me. So far what we have covered is we have seen what is the framework, so how it is being integrated. So what are the capabilities of the document management, data management? So where all it is used? What are the different types of, what are the different categories of entities that are available? Parameter, whether it is a document or whether it is a reference, whether it is a master. So then we saw how do we export and import it, and what are the parameters that are available in the module itself. And we saw one export of data, and then we modified one of the data. We tried to import the erroneous data. We tested that it is not working. Then we saw Excel add-in, Office integration. So that is one of the major thing. And how do we modify the existing document template? So which is the Office integration, which we saw that. So far, any questions do you have?
Amir, I do have one question. Ashish this side.
Yeah, yes.
Like we modified that template, okay? Like the Microsoft provided template which we have modified. So if we will modify that and that will be overridden, in that case the standard one will still remain in the system, or it will be gone like.
It will still remain. Let me just open that system again. OK, this has been overridden. OK, suppose if we don't want to use the overridden and we have to restore it back to the system, what we will do is we will simply say reload the system template. This will bring me the older version from the system itself. Maybe we have done some mistakes in the format. So this, by clicking on the reload system templates, it will bring back the original.
Okay. Microsoft provided templates will be there, and user created templates will also be there. Like both templates we can.
Yes. By default, the system user created templates will be used for us to.
That's fine. Thanks.
Rest of the team, any other questions? Do you have anything? We are just close to 4:30.
I have a question, sir. Hello? Hello, sir. I have one question.
Yeah, please.
In the data management, if we select the pass the null value option select, and still I found on some if at the dev side they mentioned some code that there should not be passed as a null value. So in that situation, whether it will pass the value or not?
No,
Just
no, no,
tell me.
it will not pass the value. The business validation will happen at the staging. Even though if you have overridden at the entity level, actual
Okay.
data has to go and sit in your table, which is a DB.
Okay.
So there is a validation at the table level that will stop you from the business point of view. So the business logic will fail there.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other points, guys? So we have a internal server where you can do this practice. I hope so. You are all aware of this environment, benchmark environment. So this is the one I'm using it. So you can use this for your testing. There are a lot of scenarios that will come. And one point which I missed is on the data effective tables. For example, if you're also updating the tables which are data effective. For example, if you work on the human resource module, there are certain tables which are date effective, date and time effective. So you cannot modify the one which like how we did for the vendor master. We cannot do that for the tables which are date effective tables. OK, so that will be stopped by the system saying that the duplication cannot be done in the system. So there
in
are certain
that case,
date
how
and
will
time
we
effective tables. It is a creation only. So in that case, what we have to do is we can use the Excel add-in feature to update the records. For example, let me say. In the human resource, employment is one of the table. You cannot directly re-upload or re-modify the existing one because it's a date and time effective table. For example, you cannot update these records, from the data management module. What you can do is you can create ones. You can use the data management module to upload the record once. If there is any correction in this, what we will do is we will use the Excel add-in feature when we will do the modification in the Excel add-in. Open in Excel is again a data entity. So this will give you the entity name employment V2. For example, if the dimension is wrong, I have to update that. I can do that from the employment Excel add-in, not from the data management module. This is one of the limitations that we are having in the data management module. It's not actually a limitation. It's basically a validation. There cannot be multiple records that can be created. What I will do is I will add the dimension, default dimension. I can go and modify the dimension here, but I cannot do this from the data management.
So if I try to, I'm Sandeep here.
Yes, Sandeep.
If I try to upload, we have data entities which are there for the date effective tables, forms. If I try to do it, it will probably create a new entry in there, right?
Yes, but what we cannot do is we cannot create a same record in the same date. For
We cannot
example,
modify the record. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah. If it is related to the start date, for example, the employment which was there earlier is 1st of Jan. Later you are updating for 1st of Feb. That will be accepted.
Okay. Now
Yeah,
I have a
it is
very
little.
important question. I have with the problem I have faced in the past as well. When we talk about the data management module, uh, there are various data entities there. for me
Yes.
to upload, for example,
Yeah, I think you missed this part. I'll just re-show that the entities, Either see what we can do is we can easily go and find the entity name by the form itself. If you go to mouse over that, it will show what is the entity name. Okay.
Okay.
Whichever the form you are there, it will show the entity name in the same form. So if you see that employee V2, SCM worker detail is SPA worker details, it will show here itself in the form level. Okay. There is another way to find the entity name. Data management. In the data entities, category view or the model view. If you go to the model view, you will again filtered with the modules. Okay. For example, you wanted to find something in the accounts payable on the masters. Then you will have only those are related to the vendor master. Let me go to the human resource. Maybe it will be relevant for you.
Okay.
This is POA. Not created like that. Okay, fine. So basically in the base product, it has grouped based on the modules. So we will go to the respective modules. We see human resource parameters. We have only these many entities. Okay. That's when if you see that in one of my slide, I showed you how the data is it is categorized. The categories of entity, either it can be a parameter, which is accounts payable parameter, general ledger parameters. It can be of references. Maybe it is a unit of measurement. For example, unit of measurement, dimensions. It is of type references. And we have something called masters, employee master, employee details. All those are the master details. Okay. And some we have on the transaction level. So based on these categories, system will show you what are the entities that are available. Entity category view. If you click on this, it will categorize that and then it will show you only those which are there in that. For example, in the master, I wanted to see fixed asset masters. So these are the master entities which is which is available for this module. Then it will be easy for you to identify which is the entity which you're looking for. Or else you go to the form itself, whichever the form you are. Maybe for example, employee. I went to the employment history. So I am in the employment history. I want something to be updated here. I'll click on the Excel ID in here and see what are the list of available entities. And this is the entity name. Employment V2 is my entity name. Right. And if I have to go inside and then I will go to that particular form and then take the entity name from there. I'll take from here. So the employment per company is employment per company. So based on that, it will be employment detail is something which we can do it in the Excel, export to Excel. Employee per company is the employee details. Employment details we can find the entity name by here itself.
Will there be any follow-up session for this session as well?
I'm not sure about it. Rafi, my first, you're there.
Because I have one more discussion which might turn into a long discussion. So that's why I'm asking.
Okay, I'm not sure about it. This was planned yesterday. No? It was a last minute notice.
See, it's a very simple question. Since you have been a part of the implementation team, probably you can throw some more light on it. Whenever we are implementing a particular project from the scratch, there's definitely a sequence of data that we need to upload in the system.
Yes, I think you have missed this also one, which I was telling in the beginning of the session. Okay, for example, apart from ISV, just to give you an heads up, we have something called templates. Okay, so you don't know what is the sequence that we need to follow. For example, let me load all the default templates here. System will give you templates with the sequence. So you can use this template to configure your GL module, and it will give you the list of entities which are to be executed in what sequence. Okay.
The sequence is already there.
Yes, sequence number, execution level, how and after which has to execute. All the sequencing are done in the Microsoft itself. So what we will basically do is we will take the data, we will just use this template, attach the file, and we'll simply execute it. So it will not execute the one which has the dependency because the sequence is already set. Let me just let this load. I will show you that. But for our ISV solution, what we can do is we can ask Anshu to create a template, or even we ourselves can sit one time and then we'll create a custom template. Okay, so that it will not be missed out. So we always go and put a template and we attach all the files. So this will be a fast track for us to do the implementation also. So it's one of the good feature that we can use it. For example, if you see the GL calendar is there, the execution level is 25, sequence is 10. Similarly, if I go down, ledger parameter has to be there first. Okay, before that, organization email template has to be there first. Okay. Similarly, it has the execution level. It will not execute at once. Level is one, but the sequence is different because it has a dependency. If you see that basic rule, ledger allocation rule has to be created first to have the basis in place, and then this. Similarly, let me open the bank master, which is the simplest one. So to have the bank account created, we need all these bank groups should be there. If you see that level in the execution is 30. After all these are created, only then the bank accounts will be created. We will load the file at once, but the execution will happen sequentially based on the execution levels.
Okay.
Okay, this is the standard template that is there for the FNO. But for ISV, we have to ask Anshu to create a template for us so that we will not miss anything. So because our tables are also fixed, we don't have a sequence mismatch. It comes very rarely.
Hi, Amit. Alim here.
All right, then let's conclude the.
One last question.
Yeah, please.
For the Excel upload, where we use that particular, what do you call it? That add-on to upload the files.
Yes.
Upload the data. So when we are doing a bulk upload, is there any limit to the amount of data we can upload?
See, Excel add-in is always, it's a it happens externally, right? So we have a connection with Excel and then the system. So it is advised to have the small amount of data and upload in upload in a batch, but but there is no limitation as such. For the journals and all, we can upload as many as records. But only thing is it consumes a lot of your memory, which is the system memory, local system memory.
Okay.
It's Excel data, right? So Excel runs on your local PC, so it consumes your local PC, and then based on the RAM speed, it consumes it.
All right.
It's always advised to use it in a batch.
Thank you.
If no more questions, can we conclude? I don't know if is.
Yes, yes, Amit. I think Rafi is not here.
Okay, all right, then let's conclude. So thanks everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amit, for the session.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.